What is up, everybody? It is Sean here, back with another video, and today we are talking about Doflamingo, blue Doflamingo. I recently took this list to my locals and I got in the top 3 out of, I believe, 16 or 17 players. Some pretty interesting matchups that we're going to kind of talk about, but yeah, Doflamingo is everywhere. Everybody wants to play this deck and everybody kind of has different takes on it. I think the hype for the deck is dying down a little bit. I think since there's so much Doflamingo that a lot of people are starting to kind of shift away, because this was probably the most hyped starter deck out of all of them. The purple Luffy was also probably the second most hyped, but Doflamingo seemed to be kind of the most hyped deck that everybody was super excited to play for. Me personally, I've been wanting to play the deck since 01. The reason why I didn't play it back then is because the deck was super expensive. If anybody remembers the Jinbeis, the promo Jinbeis that got reprinted in the starter deck were like $60 some, and they were only promo cards, so you can only get them from events. So that's why I didn't play it, because it was just so expensive. And the deck also has changed a lot. In 07, we got the Jinbeis, which just totally revamped the deck and made it way more consistent than it ever was. And even in the 07 and 08 format, the deck was still present. It's definitely probably not going to be the menace that it is right now. And going into 09, Dawn 2, when attacking, you pay 1, reveal the top card of your deck. If it is a 7 Warlords of the C type character card with a cost of 4 or less, you may play it rested. So this deck is all about board spamming. It has some control aspects to it. And I mean, it's also good at keeping your hand size pretty well. As long as your hand size is good and as long as your board is wide, there's really no way that you can lose. There are some weaknesses, obviously. There's some bad matchups. We're going to get into that. But yeah, I'm going to show you guys my list and kind of explain why I run what I run, and talk about my matchups and just talk about the deck overall, because I think it's a super fun deck. I enjoy playing it, and I want to continue playing it even after the hype dies down. Real quick, if you guys are new here, please like and subscribe. If you like more content like this, deck techs, all that good stuff, have plenty more for it on the way. But let's go ahead and get into the deck list. So I run 4 Mihawks, which I think most lists run. Really, it's just for the 2k counter, but I mean, you can play it off of leader effect. It is searchable, so if you need a 2k counter, you can grab it back. You can grab it with Sengoku, you can grab it with the Gecko, and you can just play it. There are actually a lot of times where I've played this card rested off of leader effect, and it's done when attacking, draw 2, trash 2. It's not bad. If just keep in mind that when you put a Dawn on it, it has to happen. It's not a you may effect, it has to happen. But yeah, it's mostly for the 2k, but it does come on board, and it is a 5k, so you know, it's just another swing. But it's mostly for the 2k. We have 4 Sengoku. Now this card is really crucial. We're going to kind of talk a little bit more about, like, with law and stuff like that. This card is really just good for seeing your essential pieces. You know, really you want to grab Jinbeis off of it. I mean, if you don't have Jinbei in your starting hand, especially if you're going second in a mirror match, you want to try and play this. And then there's a law card in the starter deck that we're going to kind of talk more about, that you can essentially play this card twice. But yeah, running 4 is pretty important, and the card is good throughout the entire mat. And then speaking of Jinbei, of course we're gonna run 4 Jinbeis. Yeah, I mean, this card just made this deck way more consistent. If you don't know what it does, when on play is play up to 1/7 Warlords of the C type character from your hand. So really the ideal is you could play the Weevils, the Laws, the Boas. It's just really, you're just searching for this and you want it in your starting hand. So of course you got to run 4. It's just an essential card of the deck. And then we have 4 Peronas. Basically just, again, on play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, place them at the top or bottom. So it's basically just there to help Doffy and stack your deck and stack it the way you want. But yeah, I know a lot of people have cut this card, and I can understand why, or they're just running 2 because there's so many other ways to stack your deck and they don't feel that it's necessary. It still works out for me a lot, you know, if I don't have a way of doing it. I know Buggy does it, Boa does it. There's just a lot more ways to stack your deck, and that's why people are cutting her. But she has a 1k counter, so it's not like it's a brick in hand. And we have 4 of the new 4-cost 5k law cards. So if you don't know what this card does, on play, you may return 1 character to its owner's hand. And then if your leader has the 7 Warlords type, return up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less to the owner's hand. Now, the thing to keep in mind with this card is you can bounce one of yours and you can bounce your opponent's, or you could bounce 2 of your own as well. So if you have this and you have Sengoku and you have Perona on the field and it's later in the game, you can play it, bounce those 2 back to your hand, and you can essentially play Sengoku twice. So you get a ton of value from this card. But also if you want to bounce your opponent's stuff, maybe they have a blocker out, you want to bounce back to their hand, that's good too. This card is just insanely good. It's really good again in the mirror, being able to bounce Jinbei and play it back out. Let's say it's rested, you want to play it active. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with this card. Then we have 4 Weevils. Yeah, I mean, what else can be said about this card? It is a 4-cost 6k on play draw card. The only thing that would make this card better is if it had a counter, but it probably would get banned. But yeah, this card is just kind of a no-brainer. I mean, the ideal is just Jinbei Weevil. That was the ideal kind of combo for a while. It just refills your hand. So yeah, I mean, of course you got to run 4. But yeah, there's really not a lot to say about the card. It's just a good card. It's just a good searchable card that refills your hand, and it's a 6k body. Yeah, I mean, it's searchable. You can play it off leader effect. So, and it's also really good in the mirror. I mean, having your blockers out, especially against like yellow, is really important. So yeah, running 4 is essential in my opinion of the boas. All right, then we have 4 2k Crocs. I was running the Croc for a little bit in the starter deck, and it's okay. I didn't really find it necessary to keep it in, so I ended up just taking them out and putting these in. It's really just for the 2k, but again, you can play it off leader effect. So if you have nothing else to do, let's say you have a Jinbei, you don't have a Weevil or a Boa or a Law or something better, you can play that. And it does have an on play. You can pay 1 Dawn, return up to 1 character with a cost of 2 or less to its owner's hand. So you can bounce stuff back to your hand, or if you need to bounce like a little small blocker from your opponent, you can do that as well. Then we have 2 of like the graveyard geckos, I like to call them, because basically on play, add up to 1/7 Warlords of the or Thriller Bark type character with a cost of 4 or less, other than Gecko Moria, from your trash to your hand. So it's basically, let's say like you're out of Jinbeis, you need a Jinbei. It just lets you grab whatever you need. Maybe you need a 2k. It's just there, but I don't use it as often as I thought I was going to, so I cut it to 2. I know a lot of other lists are doing that as well. And yeah, I really haven't missed running 4 of it. I think 2 is perfectly okay. Well, it comes in handy. I mean, sometimes you do have to hard cast it, which kind of sucks, but usually you either want to play it off leader effect or off the Jinbei. And then similar enough, we are running 2 Buggies, which is another searcher. On play, look at the top 3 cards at the top of your deck and place them at the top in any order. So not top or bottom, just top. 2k counter, searchable. But yeah, I think I was running 4 as well and kind of flushed around with ratios, and 2 seemed to be good. Then we have 2 Jozus, which this card has kind of gotten pretty popular among Doffy players. It's good because it doesn't fall under the 4-cost 5k or 4-cost 6k. So in a lot of matchups that are able to KO stuff, this is a 6-cost 7k. So it's not targetable in that range, like the Nami or the Luffy from like what Enel plays, one of our worst matchups. But on play, you may return one of your characters other than this character card to its owner's hand, then return up to 1 character with a cost of 6 or less to its owner's hand. It's pretty similar to the Law, except it's just a bigger body and it sticks a little bit more. It's really good in the mirror. I know some lists run 4. I've just been running 2 to kind of fit some other stuff in. And yeah, I think the card is really good. I think that running at least 2 Jozus is good in just a lot of matchups. With this deck, I kind of tried to just cover as many matchups as I can. You know, obviously Doffy has a pretty good matchup spread, but there are some really bad matchups that we'll get into. And again, in the mirror, this card's also really good, being able to bounce like blockers and just a bunch of other stuff. And it's 6 or less, so that kind of fits the range of some other really annoying cards. We have 2 of the 2k Laws, this is the very beautiful alt art, because you guys know I love Law. But yeah, this card is actually pretty good early on. It's a 2k counter, but you activate main, you may return this character to the owner's hand. If your opponent has 6 or more cards in their hand, you can place 1 card from their hand to the bottom of their deck. So it's good for that early on. Let's say, you know, you play it off a leader effect and be able to get rid of 1 card off your opponent's hand, and it goes back to your hand. So you get a 2k back. So the card's good. I was running 4 at one point, like a lot of the other cards, and 2 just seemed to just be good. Like 4, you know, there's nothing wrong with running 4. I just, for some other stuff that I wanted to fit into this deck, that's why I chose to cut it down to 2. And then we are running 3 puddings. I think at one point I was only running 2, but there was just like so many annoying matchups like black and yellow that were just had a really, like, just had the upper hand. So getting the pudding out, just upping the puddings just seemed necessary. And yeah, I think 3 is good, especially against yellow, against black, yellow, Luffy, and Nell. Those matchups, it's really good. And again, going back to Law, there's a way you can play this essentially twice. I don't know if that, obviously you would spread it out so you wouldn't do it over and over. But yeah, the card's good. It's really powerful. It's also good into the mirror. So it's just, again, covering your matchups. Like the pudding and like some other tech cards that I'm about to get into. It's just really covering your matchups and making sure that you have an answer to pretty much anything that your opponent throws at you. And hand size is very important, so that's why we run this. We have 2 Teach. I'm gonna be honest, I don't use this card a ton. I think 2 in there is good. Now, when it comes in handy, it comes in handy. But yeah, it is good. I just don't use it as much as I thought I was going to. So activate main once per turn. You may place 1 card from your hand at the top of your deck. Give up to 2 Rested Dawn cards to your leader or one of your characters. So it's just letting you kind of play leader effect almost for free. And being able to for sure put something on your deck that, let's say you maybe like whiffed off of a Perona or something. And it just guarantees you that body on board, that leader effect. But yeah, I don't use it as much as I thought I would, but it does come in handy. It does drain your hand, though. I think that's the main downside with this card. But other than that, I'd say it's solid. I think 2 is kind of like the sweet spot for me. All right, now we're going to kind of get into like more of the tech cards. So here we have the 7-cost Doffy from the starter deck, which is 7 cost 7k. On play, return up to 1 character with a cost of 7 or less to the owner's hand. If you know Jackson Huang, he won pretty recently and he had this in this deck, so I figured I'd try it out. And honestly, it's been doing pretty good for me. It's really good into the mirror. It's really good. You can bounce your own stuff back as well. This is establishing a body. So that's like kind of the main upside to doing this instead of playing Gravity Blade is you're establishing a body and it's harder to get rid of. It sticks more. This card is coming handy for me a lot of the time, so I'm probably going to keep it. Then we have the 10 cost Kaido, which I think a lot of lists are running. So yeah, draw 4 cards if your opponent has 3 or less life. It really is just kind of like a make it or break it play, like it really helps out against a lot of others. And it's sticky, similar to the 7 cost Doffy. It sticks. It's way harder for like Lucci to remove or Black Luffy. It sticks. It's also really good against Enel, just refreshing your hand size and just having that 12k on for the next turn. So yeah, I think 1 Kaido is pretty good. And then Gravity Blade. So yeah, I'm only running 1 Gravity Blade. Again, main, place up to 2 characters at the cost of 6 or less at the bottom of its owner's deck. And it does come in handy. It's just, I don't think it's really that great into the mirror. If you're playing this card, that usually means you're already behind. But it does have a trigger, place up to 1 character at the cost of 5 or less at the bottom of its owner's deck. So that's also really good, the few triggers that this deck has. But yeah, I wasn't running any removal, and then I decided to kind of add it in just because of certain situations, or I got screwed over by, something else that a couple other decks were running. So yeah, I think, having some removal in this deck is kind of necessary. So just running 1 Gravity Blade. Then we have Perfume Femur. This card is honestly really good. Like, honestly, I've been thinking about adding another one because this one is just come in handy. It wins you games. It really does, especially against yellow like Vegapunk. This won me a game. Activate main, select up to one of the 7 Warlords type leader or character cards. Gains plus 2,000. Then during the attacks, your opponent cannot activate blocker. So it's basically your Diable Jambe. It does have a trigger, draw 1 card. So it wins you games. The only downside to running 1 is if you search and you don't grab it, you're probably never going to see it. You're not going to see it for the rest of the game. So that's why I've been considering upping it to 2. I think if you're running Doffy, you should at least run 1. It wins you games. And your opponent has to respect this card. Like if they're at 0 life, they have to play around this card, otherwise they lose. And then lastly, we just have the 1 Red Rock. So yeah, Red Rock wasn't running any. I think I was running 2 at one point. And just kind of play around with it. It's really just for like the kids and the geckos and just the big bodies of why I'm running this. Yeah, and again, another trigger, place up to 1 character at the cost of 4 or less at the bottom of its owner's deck. It's just kind of like safety. It's just damage control. Going up against like black or yellow, getting rid of like those bigger bodies, or maybe you just need to get rid of a blocker and just swing out. There's just a lot of situations where why I'm running like the Red Rocks and the Gravity Blades. And I totally understand why if you don't run them, if your deck is built different, it's more kind of the bounce control aspect. The way that I built this deck is just kind of, it handles a lot of matchups. I'm trying to make it to where it has an answer for everything. And I think I've gotten close. So let's go ahead and talk about my matchups. My matchups were Smoker, Bello Betty, Grape Doffy, Calgara, and Vegapunk. I dodged the Enel.
Piece of shit! Damn it!
Aw, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
As Doflamingo, we do not want to see an L, but there are ways around it. Like, again, like with the Vegapunk can also be kind of annoying. I don't think it's quite as annoying as the Enel, just because the Enel's running bigger bodies. The main weakness for this deck is like top end, because this deck really doesn't have a top end. You're really playing a lot of just kind of mid-range stuff, besides if you run the 7K Doffy and the Kaido, which I do, but only one of. Other than that, it has a pretty good matchup into a lot of things. It's really good into Nami. It's pretty good into Black Luffy. Of course, if you go second, it's good into Katakuri. It's good into Bonnie. It just has a lot of, it has a pretty good matchup spread. So I think that this deck is in a really good spot right now, and I enjoy playing it, so I'm going to keep playing it. But that is the list that I run. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think of Blue Doflamingo. And again, if you're new, please like and subscribe. But anyway, guys, we'll see you next time. Peace.